Dylan Park hated pity. He hated it more than bland espresso, more than landlords, more than alpha customers who snapped their fingers like he was part of the furniture. The cafe, Park and Brew, was his mother's legacy. She had built it from scratch as a single omega, raising a stubborn child in a world that preferred alphas in charge. When she passed away, she left Dylan the shop and the loans she had taken to keep it alive. Dylan never told anyone. He smiled at customers. He flirted for tips. He argued with suppliers. He ignored overdue notices stacked in his drawer. And then Sean Han walked in. Tall, composed, dressed like he owned the building. Sean didn't just drink coffee. He evaluated it. "This taste is slightly uneven," he said after one sip. Dylan blinked. "You're slightly uneven." A pause. Then, surprisingly, Sean almost smiled. He came back the next day, and the next. He sat in the same corner, laptop open, scent calm but dominant. The cafe's regulars whispered. Everyone knew who he was. Han Corporation's heir. The cold alpha who turned companies profitable by simply existing in the room. Dylan refused to treat him differently. Until the landlord showed up. "I can't keep extending deadlines," the man hissed quietly near the counter. "You're 3 months behind." Dylan forced a smile. "I said I'll handle it." "You don't have the money." "I'll get it." From the corner, Sean looked up. He said nothing, but he heard everything. That night, Sean requested a full background report on Dylan Park. By morning, he knew about the loans, the interest, the personal guarantees, the impending legal action. He also knew something else. The Han Corporation board was pressuring him to marry, stability, image, a proper alpha with a proper omega. Sean disliked being told what to do, but he did appreciate solutions, and Dylan Park was suddenly a very convenient one. It rained the day Sean decided to interfere. Dylan was in the storage room calculating which bill to ignore first when Sean stepped inside uninvited. "You can't just walk in here," Dylan snapped. Sean replied calmly, "You owe your landlord a lot of money." Dylan froze. "You investigated me?" "Yes." "That's insane. It's efficient." Dylan's face burned with humiliation. "I don't need your charity." "I'm not offering charity." Sean stepped closer, not aggressive, just steady, controlled. "You need liquidity. I need a spouse." Dylan stared at him. Sean continued, voice even. "The board is insisting on marriage to stabilize investor confidence. An omega spouse improves optics. I prefer someone intelligent, independent, not easily intimidated. You just blackmailed me with my debt and then complimented me." "Yes, you're unbelievable." Sean's gaze sharpened. "Marry me. I will clear your debts, invest in your cafe, and ensure long-term financial security. In return, you will attend public functions and fulfill the role of my spouse." This wasn't romance. This was negotiation. "You're using my desperation," Dylan said quietly. "Yes. And what do you get?" "Control of the narrative." Silence filled the storage room. Dylan should have thrown him out. Instead, he asked, "And if I refuse?" Sean's expression didn't change. "Then your cafe closes within 2 months." That hurt, because it was true. Dylan looked at his flower-covered hands, at the shelves his mother once organized, at the fading paint on the walls. He swallowed his pride. "I'll have to think about this. Take your time," Sean said and walked out like he didn't just put Dylan in a tight spot. Later, Dylan did not sleep that night. He lay in his tiny apartment above the cafe, staring at the ceiling, replaying Sean's calm, terrifyingly logical proposal. "Marry me. Clear the debt. Save the cafe. Sell your freedom." At 3:17 a.m., Dylan sat up and groaned into his pillow. "This is insane," he muttered. But insanity was better than bankruptcy. The next morning, he showed up at Han Corporation headquarters wearing his most professional outfit. He was escorted to the top floor. Sean was waiting. Of course he was. Perfect suit, perfect posture, perfect control. "You came," Sean said simply. "Don't sound surprised. I like my cafe alive." A faint flicker of amusement passed through Sean's eyes. Dylan dropped into the chair across from him. "We're drafting a contract. It's already prepared." "Of course it is." Sean slid a document across the table. Dylan scanned it. "Debt cleared within 72 hours. public marriage for a minimum of 2 years, separate personal finances, no interference in Dylan's business operations. His brows lifted slightly. You're not taking ownership of the cafe? No. Why? It matters to you. That answer hit harder than expected. Dylan masked it with sarcasm. Don't go soft on me now. I am not soft, Sean replied calmly. Oh, I'm sure. A pause. Their eyes locked. There it was again, that quiet current between them. Dylan cleared his throat. One more clause. Sean waited. If either of us develops feelings. Sean's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. We don't weaponize them. Silence stretched. Agreed, Sean said at last. The contract was signed. Dylan walked out as someone's future spouse, and for the first time in years, his debt was no longer strangling him. He should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt like he'd just stepped into something much more dangerous than poverty. The engagement was announced 3 days later. The internet exploded. Alpha CEO marries unknown Cafe Omega. Dylan read the headlines while stress-eating macarons in Sean's penthouse kitchen. They couldn't at least leak a flattering picture? He demanded. Sean, standing at the counter reviewing financial reports, didn't look up. You are attractive. Dylan stayed silent, not wanting to stumble upon his words. Reporters camped outside the cafe. Investors sent congratulatory messages. The board suddenly approved 3 pending expansion deals. The marriage was already working. That evening, they attended their first event together. A charity gala. Dylan wore a fitted silver suit. Sean wore black. When they stepped into the ballroom, conversations paused. Alphas evaluated. Omegas whispered. Dylan smiled brightly and hooked his arm through Sean's. Remember, he muttered, convincing. Sean's hand settled at Dylan's waist. It was meant to look natural. Too natural. You're tense, Sean murmured. Everyone's staring. Let them. Easy for him to say. He'd been born into this world. Dylan hadn't. A board member approached. Congratulations, Sean. We were beginning to worry. Sean's tone remained smooth. There was no need. And you must be Dylan. The man's gaze sharpened. Quite unexpected. Dylan smiled sweetly. I get that a lot. The alpha continued. I mean strategically. There it was. The implication. Gold digger. Convenient omega. Decorative spouse. Dylan's fingers tightened under the table. Before he could respond, Sean spoke. He brings perspective, emotional intelligence, independent business experience, and loyalty. The room shifted. No one had expected that. Dylan certainly hadn't. And Sean added coolly, he is not a transaction. Speak accordingly. Silence. The alpha cleared his throat. Of course. Dinner continued. But something had changed. On the ride home, the car was quiet. You didn't have to do that, Dylan finally said. Yes, I did. It would have been easier to let it slide. Sean looked at him then, not cold, not distant. I do not tolerate disrespect toward what is mine. The words hung in the air. Dylan's pulse skipped. What is mine? He echoed. You are my spouse. That wasn't possessive. It wasn't cruel. It was certain. Dylan swallowed. This was supposed to be business, he murmured. It is. But Sean's voice was quieter now, less convincing. Living together was strange. Sean woke up at 5:30 a.m. every day, no alarm, no hesitation. He worked out, showered, dressed, and read financial reports before Dylan even opened one eye. Dylan noticed, because he started pretending to sleep. He didn't know why. Maybe because watching Sean in his natural state, unguarded, hair slightly messy, glasses low on his nose, felt too intimate. One morning, Dylan shuffled into the kitchen in oversized pajama pants and a shirt that had flour stains from 3 years ago. Sean was already dressed. Of course he was. You look like you fought a pillow and lost, Sean observed. You look like you iron your socks. I do, Dylan blinked. You're terrifying. Coffee became their silent ritual. Sean didn't comment when Dylan replaced the expensive imported beans with his own cafe blend. He just drank it and finished the entire cup. That felt like a victory. Later that afternoon, Dylan decided to invade Sean's office. It was minimal, organized, cold. You don't have a single personal photo, Dylan said, leaning against the bookshelf. They are unnecessary. or you don't like remembering things. That made Sean pause. Dylan noticed. Your parents? Dylan asked carefully. My father believes affection weakens leadership, Sean replied evenly. My mother believes silence preserves peace. That explained a lot. Dylan softened slightly. That sounds lonely. It was efficient. That's not the same thing. For a moment, something vulnerable flickered behind Sean's eyes. Then it was gone. You analyze too much, Sean said. You feel too little. A beat. Sean stepped closer, not threatening, just steady. I feel, he said quietly. I simply choose when to display it. A week later, Dylan's Cafe held its soft relaunch under Han Corporation's investment. It was packed. Reporters, influencers, business elites, pretending they had always loved artisanal coffee. Dylan thrived in the chaos, laughing, directing staff, flirting with customers for tips. Sean stood near the counter, observing, watching, always watching. An alpha investor, young, smug, too comfortable, leaned across the counter toward Dylan. So this is what the CEO married? Cute. Dylan forced a smile. Careful, I bite. I wouldn't mind. Before Dylan could retort, a familiar presence settled behind him. Sean's hand slid to Dylan's lower back. Subtle. Claiming. He does bite, Sean said calmly, and I do mind. The investor stepped back immediately. Dylan felt the warmth of Sean's palm through his shirt, too aware. After the crowd thinned, they stood alone behind the counter. You didn't have to scare him, Dylan muttered. I did not scare him. You absolutely did. Silence. Then, do you enjoy making them look at you? Sean asked. The question wasn't jealous. It was curious. Dylan blinked. It's called marketing. And the touching? They tip more. Sean's jaw tightened slightly. Dylan noticed. You're not jealous, are you? No. Too fast. Dylan stepped closer, testing. If this marriage is just business, it shouldn't bother you. It does not. But Sean's scent deepened, alpha instincts surfacing. Dylan's omega instincts answered before he could stop them. The space between them shrank. Not touching. Not yet. Sean, Dylan whispered, suddenly aware of everything. Sean's voice lowered. You are testing me. Maybe. A long pause. Sean's fingers flexed slightly at Dylan's waist. Then, he stepped back, deliberately, controlled. We agreed on boundaries, he said evenly. Dylan's pulse raced. Yes. And I do not break agreements. But his eyes lingered, and Dylan realized something undeniable. Sean wasn't cold. He was holding himself back. And the fact that he could made Dylan want to see what would happen if he didn't. A day later, the argument started over something stupid. It was raining heavily, thunder shaking the glass walls of the penthouse. Dylan had just gotten off the phone with a supplier who was trying to inflate prices now that the cafe was backed by money. They think I'm incompetent, Dylan snapped, pacing the living room. Like I can't run my own business without you. Sean stood near the window, calm but watchful. You are not incompetent. That's not what they think. Then prove them wrong. Dylan stopped pacing. You always say that like it's easy. It is. No, Sean, it's easy for you. The words landed heavier than intended. Silence followed. Sean's posture stiffened slightly. Clarify. You grew up in boardrooms. I grew up watching my mom beg banks to extend deadlines. I had to smile through humiliation. You don't know what that feels like. The thunder cracked loudly. For a moment, Sean said nothing. Then, quieter than usual. You assume I have not been humiliated. Dylan faltered. My father introduced me to investors at 16, Sean continued. When I hesitated during a presentation, he replaced me publicly, said I lacked dominance. Dylan blinked. I was not permitted to fail, Sean said evenly. You were not permitted to collapse. We survived differently. The rain hit harder against the windows. The tension shifted, not sharp now, but exposed. Dylan's voice softened. You never talk about that. It is irrelevant. It's not. Another crash of thunder, this one closer. The lights flickered. Then the entire penthouse went dark. Dylan froze. You've got to be kidding me. Backup systems should have kicked in immediately. They didn't. The storm must have hit a transformer nearby. For the first time since moving in, the penthouse felt small and very, very quiet. They found each other in the darkness. Not dramatically, just instinctively. Dylan hated thunder. Always had. It reminded him of the night his mother was rushed to the hospital during a storm that sounded exactly like this. He never told anyone that. Another crack of thunder shook the glass. Dylan flinched. Sean noticed. "You're uncomfortable," Sean said quietly. "I'm fine." A lie. The emergency lights flickered dimly in the hallway, but the bedrooms remained pitch black. Rain lashed sideways against the windows. "Stay in my room tonight," Sean said. Dylan's heart skipped. "That breaks the agreement. It does not specify emergencies. You're unbelievable." "And you are shivering." Dylan glared, though Sean probably couldn't see it properly. Another thunderclap. Closer. "Fine," Dylan muttered. Sean's room felt different in the dark. Less intimidating. More human. There was only one bed, obviously. Dylan stood awkwardly near it. "This is temporary." "Yes." "Strictly survival." "Yes." They lay down stiffly, fully clothed, backs turned at first. Space between them. Careful space. But thunder doesn't respect boundaries. Another violent crack split the sky, and without thinking, Dylan shifted closer. Just slightly. Sean noticed. He didn't comment. Minutes passed, the storm raged. Eventually Dylan felt warmth at his back. Not pulling, not trapping. Just there. Sean's arm rested loosely over the blanket near Dylan's waist, not touching, but close enough to steady him. "Still scared?" Sean asked quietly. "I'm not scared." A pause. "Maybe a little." Sean's voice softened in a way Dylan had never heard before. "You are safe." 3 simple words. No dominance, no contract, just reassurance. Dylan's chest tightened unexpectedly. He didn't move away, and Sean didn't pull closer. They stayed like that, barely touching, barely breathing. The storm didn't calm, it got worse. Wind howled against the glass, rain streaking sideways, like the sky had a personal vendetta. Dylan lay stiff in Sean's bed, acutely aware of everything. The mattress was too big, the silence between thunderclaps was too loud, and Sean was too close. Another crack of thunder made Dylan jolt instinctively. His hand flew backward and landed directly on Sean's chest. Solid, warm, very solid. They both froze. "Sorry," Dylan muttered, not moving it. Sean's voice was steady but lower than usual. "You are gripping my shirt." Dylan blinked. Oh, he was. "I was stabilizing myself," Dylan said defensively. "From gravity?" "From thunder." Another flash of lightning illuminated the room for a split second. In that brief white light, Dylan became painfully aware that his palm was spread over Sean's sternum, and Sean's hand had instinctively come up to steady Dylan's wrist. Neither moved. The air shifted. Slowly, carefully, Dylan tried to pull back, but the blanket tangled. His knee bumped into Sean's thigh. Sean inhaled sharply. "Why are your legs everywhere?" Sean asked. "Why are you built like a heated wall?" Dylan shot back. This time, Dylan didn't even think. He turned fully and accidentally pressed against Sean's chest to chest, breath mingling, still clothed, but very, very aware. The space between them vanished. Sean's hand hovered uncertainly at Dylan's waist before settling, carefully, loosely, there. "You're shaking," Sean murmured. "I hate storms." That was the first time Dylan had admitted it out loud. Sean didn't tease him, didn't analyze. He just adjusted slightly so Dylan was tucked closer. The movement was protective, instinctive, and dangerous, because it felt right. Dylan's forehead rested briefly against Sean's collarbone. His fingers curled into the fabric of Sean's shirt again. This time, on purpose. "Don't overthink this," Dylan whispered. "I am not," Sean replied. That was a lie. They both were, but neither moved away. Eventually, exhaustion pulled Dylan under. He drifted off, still curled against Sean's chest. The next day, sunlight streamed through the windows. The storm had passed. Dylan woke slowly. Warm, very warm. He frowned slightly. Why was the mattress smaller? Why did something heavy rest around his waist? Why was there? He froze. Oh no. He was tucked tightly against Sean's chest. Sean's arm was wrapped firmly around him, and Dylan was very clearly the little spoon. Panic bloomed. Then he felt it, something very solid pressed against the back of his thigh. He went completely still, absolutely still. His brain short-circuited. There was only one explanation, and it was extremely biological. Dylan's face burned. Behind him, Sean's breathing shifted. He was awake. Of course he was. Neither spoke. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10. "Good morning," Sean said calmly. Calmly. Dylan's voice came out strained. You're aware of the situation, right? Yes. Okay, another pause. Dylan tried to shift away. Big mistake. The movement only made everything more noticeable. Sean inhaled sharply. They both froze again. This is highly inappropriate, Dylan muttered. You are the one who rotated during sleep. I did not rotate. You are currently facing away from me. That is a rotation. Dylan groaned into his hands. This never happened. Biology disagrees. Sean, a beat then, unexpectedly, Sean's shoulders moved. He was laughing. The sound shocked Dylan more than anything else. You're laughing? At this? You are panicking dramatically, Sean said. I am pinned. Incorrect, you are being held. Dylan finally twisted free, stumbling off the bed and nearly tripping over the blanket. Sean sat up, hair slightly messy, expression softer than Dylan had ever seen. His eyes lingered. Warm, amused, possessive in a way he wasn't trying to hide anymore. Dylan fled to the bathroom, heart racing. This was supposed to be business. Contracts, control, distance. Instead, they had accidental cuddling, instinctive protection, and extremely inconvenient morning reactions. And the worst part? Dylan couldn't stop thinking about how safe he had felt in Sean's arms. Dylan avoided eye contact for exactly 47 minutes. He knew because he counted. After fleeing to his assigned bedroom and changing at record speed, he walked into the kitchen, pretending nothing had happened. Sean was already there, of course, composed, dressed, hair perfectly styled again, like he hadn't been. Dylan stopped that thought immediately. Coffee? Sean asked calmly. Yes. Their fingers brushed when Dylan took the mug. They both pulled back a fraction too fast. Silence. The air felt heavier than usual. Dylan cleared his throat. So, that was a weather-related incident. Yes. An anomaly. Correct. We will not reference it again. Understood. Another pause. Dylan sipped his coffee. It was perfect. He hated that. You drool slightly when deeply asleep. Dylan choked. I do not. It is minimal. That is not the point. For the first time that morning, Sean's mouth curved upward faintly. You also mumble. Dylan narrowed his eyes. About what? Sean took a measured sip of his own coffee. Nothing of consequence. Oh my God, Dylan's face burned. If I confessed undying love for pastries in my sleep, that stays between us. Agreed. Raf's tension didn't disappear, but it shifted, from sharp embarrassment to something warmer, softer, still dangerous. Sean's gaze lingered longer than usual. Dylan noticed. You're staring. I am observing. That's worse. A beat. You seemed comfortable, Sean said quietly. Dylan's heartbeat betrayed him. It was cold. The heating system was functioning. Emotionally cold. Sean paused at that. Then evenly. You can request proximity without a storm. Dylan's brain short-circuited. I did not request. I am stating a possibility. Calm, controlled, but not dismissive. Dylan set his mug down carefully. We have boundaries. Yes. And we're keeping them. Yes. Neither of them moved. Neither looked away. The unspoken truth sat between them. They both remembered exactly how it felt. Dylan escaped to the cafe by noon. Work helped. Orders, inventory, staff management, normalcy. Except he wasn't normal. He kept replaying the morning, the warmth, the way Sean had laughed. That laugh bothered him the most, because it had been real. By late afternoon, Sean showed up unannounced. Dylan nearly dropped a tray. You can't just appear like that. Sorry. Sean observed the cafe quietly as Dylan moved around, confident, bright, in his element. An elderly customer approached the counter. Your husband looks stern, she whispered loudly. He's decorative, Dylan whispered back. I can hear you, Sean said without looking up. The woman chuckled. He watches you like you're something precious. Dylan laughed awkwardly. He watches everything like that. But when he glanced over, Sean wasn't scanning the room. He was watching Dylan, focused. Dylan swallowed. Later, while closing up, he reached for a box on a high shelf. He slipped slightly. A hand caught his waist instantly. Firm, steady, familiar. They froze, again. You're clumsy, Sean murmured near his ear. You're hovering. You were falling. I had it handled. You did not. Dylan turned slightly, and suddenly they were too close in the quiet cafe. No storm, no excuse, just proximity. Sean's hand was still at his waist. Neither had pulled away yet. "You're doing that thing again," Dylan whispered. "What thing?" "Looking at me like you're about to break your own rules." A long pause. Sean's voice lowered. "I do not break agreements." But his thumb shifted slightly against Dylan's side. Intentional this time. Dylan's breath caught. Slow burn, slow restraint. Sean stepped back first, deliberately. Days later, the investor conference was worse than the gala, because this wasn't glitter and champagne. This was power. Rows of alphas in tailored suits, analysts, board members, media with cameras angled like weapons. Dylan stood beside Sean on stage, smiling politely, while pretending he didn't feel like prey in a room full of predators. He hated this kind of environment. Too many dominant scents, too much quiet competition, too many measuring gazes. "Relax," Sean murmured beside him. "I am relaxed," Dylan whispered back tightly. "You are clenching your jaw. I'm networking internally." Sean almost smiled. The presentation began smoothly. Sean spoke with calm authority, outlining expansion plans, profits, stability, market growth. Then it was Dylan's turn. He stepped forward to discuss brand identity and consumer loyalty. He was good at this, confident, warm, until the questions began. Is the cafe's success sustainable without corporate backing? Was the acquisition motivated by personal interest? Are you qualified to operate at this scale? Each question sounded professional. Each one felt like doubt. Dylan answered gracefully at first, but stress has consequences. And Omegas under pressure sometimes can't control instinctive scent shifts. It started subtly, a slight sweetening in the air. Soft, warm, unintentionally vulnerable. The closest alphas noticed first. Their posture changed. Eyes sharpened. The atmosphere thickened. Dylan didn't realize immediately. Sean did. Instantly. His head turned slightly toward Dylan. His expression didn't change, but his body shifted closer. Another question came, more pointed, more invasive. The scent deepened. Dylan felt it then, the heat in his chest, the faint tremble in his fingers. He hated this. Hated that his body could betray him like this in a room full of observers. Before anyone could react further, Sean stepped forward, casual, controlled. His hand settled at the small of Dylan's back, firm, grounding. Then it happened. Sean released his scent. Rich, dominant, controlled alpha presence rolling outward like a quiet command. The shift in the room was immediate. Other alphas straightened, pulled back, submitted to hierarchy without conscious thought. The vulnerability in the air vanished, replaced with certainty. Dylan's breath hitched. He felt it too. The claim, the protection. Sean leaned slightly closer, voice low enough that only Dylan could hear. "Steady." Just one word. Dylan swallowed and steadied. He finished answering the question flawlessly. The conference moved on, but the entire room had witnessed what just happened. The car ride home was silent. Dylan stared out the window. "You didn't have to do that," he said finally. "Yes," Sean replied calmly. "I did. I could have handled it. You were being cornered. I was answering questions. You were being assessed as vulnerable." Dylan turned sharply. "So what? I can't have a stress reaction now?" Sean met his gaze evenly. Not in a room full of dominant alphas. The words weren't insulting. They were factual. That somehow made it worse. "I hate that," Dylan muttered. Sean's tone softened slightly. "I know." Silence again. Then Dylan asked quietly, "Was that instinct or strategy?" Sean didn't answer immediately. His hand rested on his thigh, fingers slightly curled as if still remembering the sensation. "Both," he said at last. That honesty landed hard. Dylan looked down at his own hands. "When you did that," he admitted softly, "I felt safe." The word lingered. Sean's breathing changed, subtle but noticeable. "You were safe," he said. Dylan glanced at him. But it didn't feel like business. Sean's jaw tightened slightly. When they reached the penthouse, Dylan stepped out of the car first. "You don't have to shield me every time," he said quietly. Sean stepped closer. "I will." The statement was not commanding, just certain. The conference footage went viral. Clips of Sean stepping forward, his hand at Dylan's back, the subtle but unmistakable alpha presence that quieted an entire room. Headlines the next morning read, CEO silences investors with one move, protective or possessive. Dylan stared at his phone while sitting at the kitchen counter. You are trending, he said flatly. I am aware. They're calling you territorial. That is inaccurate. Dylan looked up slowly. Is it? Sean didn't answer immediately. Instead, he poured coffee for both of them, movements steady, controlled, like always, but Dylan noticed something new. Sean was closer than usual, not touching, just near. You didn't like it, Sean said calmly. For a second, I felt small. The word hung between them. You were never small, Sean said quietly. Dylan's throat tightened unexpectedly. That's easy for you to say. You don't lose control in rooms like that. Sean's gaze darkened, not angry, focused. You assume I do not struggle. Dylan blinked. Sean stepped closer. I am constantly controlling myself. The air changed. Dylan felt it, the weight behind those words. You think I don't notice? Sean continued softly. Every time someone stands too close to you, every time they stare at you too long. Dylan's breath slowed. That's not business, he whispered. No. Silence. Dangerous silence. Sean's hand lifted slowly and hovered near Dylan's jaw. Not touching, just close enough that Dylan felt the heat from his skin. Do not mistake restraint for absence, Sean murmured. Dylan's heart pounded so loudly, he was sure Sean could hear it. Then what is it? He asked, and then Sean stepped back, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just shaken the foundation of every boundary they set. That night felt heavier. Dylan tried reading. Failed. He tried working. Failed. Finally frustrated, he stepped into the hallway to get water. Sean's bedroom door was slightly open, light spilling out. Dylan hesitated, then knocked lightly. Come in, Sean's voice called. He was at his desk, sleeves rolled up, glasses on. Too attractive for someone so infuriatingly composed. You're working late? Dylan said. Yes. Dylan lingered near the door. You almost said something earlier. Sean looked up slowly. I said enough. No, you didn't. A pause. Dylan stepped fully into the room. That wasn't just about control in a boardroom, he said quietly. Sean removed his glasses, carefully. You are testing boundaries again. Maybe I want to know where they really are. The tension sharpened instantly. Sean stood, slowly, measured. The space between them closed, not touching, but close enough that Dylan felt the shift in temperature. You want clarity? Sean asked softly. Yes. Sean's hand lifted again, this time resting lightly against Dylan's waist. Steady. Dylan's breath caught. You affect me, Sean said, truthfully, and I do not like variables I cannot predict. Dylan's pulse raced. I'm not a spreadsheet. I am aware. His grip tightened slightly. Not possessive, but certain. If this marriage stops being controlled, Sean continued quietly, it will not be gentle. The warning wasn't threatening, it was honest. Are you saying you'd lose control? Sean's eyes lowered briefly to Dylan's mouth, then back up. Yes. The air felt thin. Dylan's fingers curled into the fabric of Sean's shirt before he could stop himself. For a split second, it felt like something would snap, like the careful restraint would finally shatter. But Sean inhaled slowly, then stepped back, again. I will not break the agreement, he said. Dylan stood there, heart racing, frustrated and shaken. He left the room really soon after, because if he stayed, he wasn't sure he'd want Sean to keep choosing restraint. The next day, the cafe was packed. Dylan preferred it that way. Noise meant distraction. Distraction meant he didn't have to think about Sean's voice saying, You affect me. He wiped down the counter aggressively. Sir, that table is already clean, one of his staff members whispered. I'm re-cleaning, Dylan muttered. From what? Emotional instability. By noon, the rush was overwhelming. Orders flying, steam hissing, customers buzzing about the conference clip. 2 university girls near the window were very obviously watching him. He's prettier in person, one whispered, and the way the CEO looked at him, I would faint. Dylan pretended not to hear. Then the door chimed. A group of corporate-looking men walked in, too polished, too loud. Investors. One of them recognized him immediately. Well, if it isn't the famous spouse. Dylan smiled professionally. Welcome to Park and Brew. What can I get you? The man leaned casually against the counter. So tell me, he said, voice low but carrying, Is the marriage as intense as it looks? Or is that just for the cameras? The cafe went quieter. Dylan kept smiling. It's coffee you're ordering, not gossip. The man smirked. Relax. Just curious. Must be convenient. Marrying power. There it was. Not admiration. Implication. Dylan's jaw tightened slightly. I built this cafe before I met him, he replied evenly. Power married me. A few customers chuckled, but the investor didn't stop. Still, he added, leaning in slightly, you must enjoy the protection. That scent display yesterday? Very primal. Dylan's fingers stilled on the counter. Heat rose, not biological, anger. I don't require permission to exist in a room, Dylan said quietly. The investor laughed lightly. Of course not. Just saying, it's useful to have an alpha who steps in when you step back. The voice cut cleanly through the cafe. Sean. Dylan didn't know when he'd walked in. He just felt him. The air shifted instantly. The investor straightened. Sean approached calmly, suit immaculate, expression unreadable, but his eyes, sharp, focused. The investor attempted a smile. Ah, Mr. Han, we were just chatting. You were overstepping. The words weren't loud, but they carried weight. The investor cleared his throat. It was harmless. It was not. Silence pressed down on the room. Dylan felt that familiar warmth at his back. Sean didn't touch him this time. He didn't need to. Order your coffee, Sean said evenly, or leave. The investor chose coffee. Quickly. The cafe slowly returned to its rhythm. But Dylan felt shaken. Not fragile. Just exposed. After the crowd thinned, Sean remained near the counter. You didn't have to do that, Dylan said quietly. Yes, Sean replied. I did. Dylan exhaled sharply. I can defend myself. I know. Sean studied him. Because this wasn't about scent now. This wasn't about instinct. It was something else. You were angry, Sean said. So, you mask hurt with anger. Dylan stilled. That landed too accurately. You don't get to analyze me in my own shop, Dylan muttered. Sean stepped closer, still not touching. You built this place alone, Sean said. You endured humiliation alone. Dylan swallowed. You do not have to continue doing so. The softness in his tone was new. Not dominant, not strategic, personal. Dylan's chest tightened unexpectedly. Why do you care so much? He asked quietly. Sean held his gaze. Because I choose to. He didn't say it out loud, but it was there. Instead he said, you are my spouse. Dylan stepped closer too. Close enough that customers would think it affectionate. But it wasn't performance. If this is still business, Dylan whispered, then stop looking at me like that. Sean's jaw flexed slightly. And how am I looking at you? Like you're already past the contract. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Sean leaned in just slightly. Close enough that Dylan felt his breath. I am, he said quietly. And that was the first time neither of them pretended otherwise. 2 days after the investor incident, the cafe was calm. Too calm. Dylan preferred chaos. Chaos meant no thinking. Unfortunately, thinking caught up with him anyway. A supplier arrived late that afternoon, a tall alpha Dylan had worked with for years. We need to renegotiate pricing, the man said bluntly. Your scale changed, so do my rates. Dylan crossed his arms. My scale improved because of smart marketing, not because I suddenly print money. Your husband prints money. And that's irrelevant. The alpha leaned closer over the counter. Be realistic. You're operating under Han Corporation now. I am not, Dylan snapped. I operate under Park and Brew. The alpha gave him a look, the kind of look Dylan hated. Dismissive. You don't have to pretend independence anymore, the man said lightly. You've got protection. Before Dylan could respond, a familiar voice cut in. He does not need protection. Sean. Again. Dylan's shoulders tensed immediately. The supplier straightened. Mr. Han, I didn't realize. You were speaking incorrectly, Sean said calmly. The air thickened. Dylan felt heat climb his neck. Not embarrassment. Frustration. I was handling it, Dylan said tightly. Sean didn't look at him. He does not operate under Han Corporation, Sean continued to the supplier. Adjust your tone. The supplier nodded quickly. Of course. Conversation ended. Too quickly. The supplier left, and silence fell between them. Dylan's jaw was clenched. You didn't have to do that, he said. Sean turned slightly. He was undermining you. I can fight my own battles. I am aware. Then why do you keep stepping in? Sean's expression shifted faintly. Because I will not allow anyone to disrespect you. I don't need permission to command respect. I did not imply. You implied plenty. The cafe staff pretended not to listen. The tension crackled. Dylan's voice lowered, but sharpened. Do you think I can't take care of myself? That is not what this is. Then what is it? Dylan demanded. A pause. Too long. And that was enough. Dylan's eyes darkened. Is it because I'm an Omega? The words landed hard. Sean stilled. That is not relevant. It's always relevant, Dylan shot back. You don't step in for other alphas like that. I would. No, you wouldn't. The truth sat there, uncomfortable. Dylan's voice cracked slightly, not weak, just raw. You think I'm fragile? I do not. And rewrote a menu board twice. When he finally walked into the apartment, the lights were dim. Sean was in the living room, not working, just sitting, waiting. You're late, Sean said calmly. I was busy. A pause. I did not mean to undermine you, Sean added. Dylan set his bag down carefully. I know, but knowing didn't erase the feeling. Sean stood. I am not accustomed to partnership, he said. My instinct has always been to lead. I don't need leading, Dylan replied quietly. I am learning that. That honesty hit harder than an apology. I stepped in front of you, Sean said. You asked me to stand beside you. Silence stretched. Dylan wasn't used to being validated that quickly. It took some of the fire out of his anger and replaced it with something more uncomfortable. Vulnerability. I don't want to resent you, Dylan admitted softly. Sean's gaze sharpened slightly. You will not. You don't know that. I will not allow it. That's not something you can control. The words lingered. Sean's jaw tightened faintly, but he didn't argue. Instead, he said, I will not interfere anymore. Dylan searched his face. And if someone disrespects me, I will remain beside you. The distinction mattered. Dylan exhaled slowly. Okay, it wasn't a full resolution, but it was something. They stood there for a long moment. Then Dylan turned toward his room. Halfway down the hallway, he paused. I don't hate that you care, he said quietly, without turning around. Behind him, Sean's voice was softer than usual. I know. The next afternoon, a different supplier, more aggressive, less polite. I don't take direction from Omegas, the man said bluntly, arms crossed. The staff went still. Dylan felt the insult like a slap. Out of the corner of his eye, Sean stood near the espresso machine, watching, not moving. Dylan's pulse pounded. This was it. This was what he asked for. Then you don't take contracts from me, Dylan replied evenly. The supplier scoffed. You're overestimating your leverage. No, Dylan said calmly. You're underestimating my independence. The man leaned closer. And who backs you up? Dylan didn't look at Sean. He didn't need to. I do, he answered. Silence fell heavy. The supplier hesitated. Dylan's voice stayed steady. If you can't respect my position, you're free to leave. I'll find someone who can. A long pause. Then the supplier stepped back. Fine, we'll keep the original rate. And just like that, it was done. No interference, no alpha cent, no stepping in. The man left. The cafe slowly resumed breathing. Dylan turned slowly. Sean was still where he'd been, arms relaxed at his sides, eyes on Dylan. Not proud, not smug, just steady. You didn't move, Dylan said quietly. You asked me not to. And you wanted to? Yes. The honesty made Dylan's chest tighten. But you didn't. No. Dylan stepped closer. You're learning, he said softly. Sean's gaze didn't waver. The tension wasn't sharp anymore. Weeks later, it was supposed to be a formal investor dinner. Elegant, controlled, important. Dylan wore charcoal gray, tailored, sharp, powerful. Not soft, not delicate. An Omega who refused to be underestimated. Sean wore black. They arrived together. They sat side by side. They looked flawless. Halfway through the evening, she appeared. Confident, in the way only rich daughters of powerful families could be. Alina Park, her family owned one of the largest hospitality groups in the city. She approached their table with a bright smile. Sean, I didn't expect to see you here. I was invited, he replied evenly. Her gaze lingered on him a second too long, before flicking to Dylan. Oh, she said pleasantly. And you must be? My husband, Sean said calmly. The word was factual. Dylan forced a polite smile. Dylan, of course, Alina said smoothly. I've heard about the arrangement. The way she said it made it sound fake. I mean, it is fake, but she doesn't know that. She took the empty seat beside Sean without asking. Too close. Her perfume drifted across the table. You've been difficult to catch lately, she teased lightly. My schedule has been full. With business? She asked, tilting her head. Yes. Her hand rested briefly on Sean's sleeve as she laughed. Light, casual, intentional. Dylan felt it like a spark under his skin. He kept his expression neutral. He took a slow sip of wine. He did not react. He absolutely reacted. Throughout dinner, Alina leaned in. She asked Sean about expansion plans, about private investments, about travel. She didn't address Dylan unless necessary. When she did, it was with thin politeness. You must find it overwhelming, she said sweetly, being suddenly involved in something so corporate. Dylan met her eyes calmly. I built my cafe from nothing, he replied. I'm comfortable in corporate rooms. A flicker of surprise. Then the smile returned. Well, that's impressive, but she turned back to Sean immediately, as if Dylan were background. Then she said it. My family is hosting a private tasting this weekend. Very selective guest list. Her eyes locked onto Sean. You should come. Not both of you. You. Dylan's pulse slowed dangerously. Oh, Alina added lightly, glancing at him. If you're not too busy, of course. Of course. Sean didn't answer right away. Dylan felt suspended in that silence, because he had no right to interrupt, no right to object. They were married for business. That was the agreement. Dylan stood, smooth, controlled. Excuse me, he said politely. I need some air. He didn't wait for a response. He walked out onto the balcony. Cold air hit his skin. He inhaled sharply. Jealousy without permission is humiliating. He gripped the railing. Footsteps followed a moment later. You left, Sean said quietly. Yes. You are upset. Dylan let out a small, brittle laugh. I don't have the right to be. Silence. She was disrespectful, Sean said. She was interested. She was dismissive of you. That's not new. Sean's jaw tightened slightly. Dylan turned to him. You can go, Dylan said evenly. You don't need to stand out here. I am not finished speaking. With her? With you. That shifted something. Dylan's voice dropped. She invited you. Yes. She didn't invite us. No. And you didn't correct her. A pause. I was waiting. For what? Sean stepped closer. To see if you would object. Dylan's breath caught. You wanted me to? Yes. That's unfair. Why? Because we're not. Dylan stopped himself. Not what? Sean pressed. Not together. Sean's eyes darkened slightly. We are married. For business. For now. The words hit hard. For now. Dylan looked away. You can go to her event, he said stiffly. It would be good networking. I will not attend if you do not. I have no interest in appearing alone at an event that implies otherwise. Otherwise what? That I am available. The air shifted. Dylan swallowed. She clearly thinks you are. She is mistaken. And you don't mind that? Sean stepped closer again. Close enough that Dylan could feel his warmth. I mind that she disrespected you. The simplicity of that answer made something in Dylan's chest tighten. You could have told her, Dylan said quietly. Yes, but you didn't. I wanted to see if you would claim the seat beside me. Claim, that word again. Dylan's heart pounded. I can't just announce that, he whispered. We agreed this was temporary. You can still decide how you stand beside me. Silence fell between them. Inside, laughter and music continued. Outside, the world narrowed. You're impossible, Dylan muttered. Perhaps. Sean's voice lowered slightly. But I am your husband. This time, it sounded different. Not business, not distant. Dylan's fingers curled briefly into Sean's jacket before he caught himself and stepped back. We're going back inside, Dylan said. Yes. And you're sitting next to me. Yes. And if she tries that again? Sean's gaze held his steadily. I will make it clear. Dylan nodded once, still not confessing, still not claiming, but walking back inside together. When they returned, Alina smiled brightly. Everything all right? Yes, Sean said calmly. He moved past her, pulled out the chair beside Dylan, and sat, without hesitation. Alina's smile faltered, just slightly. And this time, when she tried to draw Sean into a private conversation again, he answered briefly, politely, but every time his attention returned to Dylan. Not subtle, not accidental, deliberate. And for the first time that night, Dylan felt chosen. Later on, Dylan had stepped away to the restroom. When he exited, Alina was waiting. Perfect posture, polished smile, predatory eyes. I was hoping we could talk. Dylan already knew this tone. Of course, he said smoothly. They moved slightly down the hallway, away from the main dining room. Alina's pleasant expression dropped immediately. "You're very composed," she said lightly. "I try to be." She studied him. "You must know this marriage won't last. Direct. No sugar." Dylan didn't blink. "Our contract length is not public information." She smiled thinly. "Oh, sweetheart. Everyone knows it's strategic." There it was again. Strategic. Temporary. Replaceable. "You don't fit his world," she continued calmly. "Sean needs someone who understands high-level partnerships, legacy families, power alignment." "And you think that's you?" Dylan asked gently. "I know it is." The confidence wasn't fake. She believed it. "He's wasted in a cafe," she added quietly. "You're holding him back." That one hit. Dylan's fingers tightened slightly at his sides, but his voice stayed even. "If Sean felt held back, he wouldn't stand beside me." Alina tilted her head. "He's polite. And you're entitled." The smile vanished, for a second, then returned. "You should prepare yourself," she said softly. "Alphas don't stay where they're not matched." Dylan's gaze sharpened. "And omegas don't beg." Silence. Footsteps approached. Sean's. Alina immediately stepped back, smile back in place. "Everything okay?" she asked sweetly. Dylan met Sean's eyes. "Yes," he said calmly, but something in his scent had changed, and Sean noticed. They returned to the table. Wine was being poured, investors chatting lightly. Alina waited, and then she struck. "I was just telling Dylan," she said brightly, loud enough for those nearby to hear, "how impressive it is that someone without a corporate background managed to secure such an advantageous marriage." Silence rippled outward. There it was, not subtle anymore. Dylan felt eyes shift toward him, judging, curious, advantageous marriage, as if he'd traded up. He placed his glass down carefully. "Yes," Dylan replied evenly. "It's amazing what mutual benefit looks like when both parties are intelligent." A faint murmur. Alina's smile tightened. "Of course," she said, "though long-term compatibility is another matter." Before Dylan could respond, Sean spoke. Calm, controlled, deadly. "My long-term decisions are not open for public evaluation." The table went very still. Alina blinked. "I didn't mean—" "You did," Sean interrupted smoothly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't frown, but the air shifted. "And for clarity," he continued, "Dylan is not an advantageous decision." The room held its breath. "He is my partner, not business associate, not arrangement, partner." Dylan's pulse stuttered. Alina's composure cracked for half a second. The surrounding investors exchanged subtle looks. Lines had just been drawn. Publicly. Alina didn't stop. Of course she didn't. After dinner, as guests stood and mingled, she approached Sean again. Closer, more intimate. "You don't have to posture for appearances," she said quietly. "Everyone understands strategic positioning." Dylan was within earshot. He froze. This was it. Sean didn't look at Dylan. He looked at her. And this time, his voice lost its warmth entirely. "I have never postured for appearances." She faltered slightly. "If you believe I would bind myself to someone I do not value," he continued evenly, "you have misunderstood me." The words weren't loud, but they carried. Nearby conversation slowed. Alina's cheeks flushed faintly. "You're overreacting." "No." A pause. "I am clarifying." The finality in that tone was unmistakable. "You will not speak about my husband as if he is temporary. Husband. Not arrangement. Not contract. Husband." That did it. Alina stepped back, humiliated, controlled, but defeated. "I see," she said quietly, and walked away. Neither of them noticed the camera, but someone else did. A society blogger, opportunistic, hungry. They caught the moment. Sean standing slightly in front of Dylan, body angled protectively, expression cold. The caption would read later. "Corporate Alpha publicly defends husband against heiress." By morning, the image would circulate, comment sections exploding, speculation everywhere. Back in the car, silence, city lights streaking past the windows. Dylan stared ahead. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly. "Yes," Sean replied. "No, you didn't." Dylan turned. "You made it harder." "For who?" "For us." Sean's jaw flexed slightly. "Do you regret it?" Dylan hesitated. "No." The honesty surprised them both. Then it was necessary. Silence settled again. The next morning, Dylan knew something was wrong before he even reached the cafe door. There were too many people outside. Cameras, phones, whispers. His cafe sign was in the background of at least 3 tripods. "What is happening?" one of his baristas whispered. Then someone shouted, "There he is!" Flash, flash, flash. Dylan froze. Reporters rushed forward. Is it true your husband publicly shut down Alina Park last night? How does it feel being defended like that? Is the business expanding after this partnership display? Are you attending the Park family event together? Together, together, together. Every question framed them as united, as solid, as real. Dylan forced composure. Please don't block the entrance, he said calmly. This is a business. But cameras kept flashing. Someone shoved a phone closer. How long have you two been this serious? Serious. His heart started pounding. He hadn't even processed last night. The word partner, the word husband, the way Sean's voice sounded when he said it. Then, a black car pulled up. The crowd shifted. Murmurs rippled. Sean stepped out, and the temperature changed. He moved through the crowd without pushing, without rushing, but people stepped aside. Reporters immediately redirected. Sean, was last night a declaration? Are you planning to expand your joint ventures? Is your marriage influencing your corporate alliances? Sean didn't answer immediately. He walked straight to Dylan, stopped beside him, close enough that their shoulders brushed. Dylan's breath caught. One reporter called out, "Sir, is it true you publicly chose your husband over a legacy investor?" The phrasing made Dylan's stomach twist. Chose. Sean looked directly at the cameras. Yes. No hesitation. Gasps. More flashes. Dylan's pulse stuttered. Another question. Is this marriage stronger than ever after last night? Stronger than ever. Dylan didn't know what expression he was wearing, because inside, he was spiraling. And then, it happened. Sean turned toward him. Not the cameras, not the reporters. Him. Sean's hand came up. Slow, deliberate. It brushed lightly against Dylan's jaw. Dylan's brain short-circuited. "What are you doing?" he started softly. But he didn't finish, because Sean leaned down and kissed him. Not rushed, not violent, not calculated. Slow, firm, warm. The world went silent in Dylan's ears. The flashes became white noise. Sean's hand was steady against his face. His lips were warm, sure, possessive without force. Dylan didn't move. He didn't know if he was angry or thrilled or furious that this wasn't discussed, or dizzy because it felt too right. His fingers instinctively grabbed Sean's coat, just slightly, just enough. The kiss wasn't long, but it wasn't quick either. It was unmistakable. When Sean pulled back, the cameras exploded, reporters shouting, gasps. Someone yelled, "That answers that." Dylan's face burned. His heart was slamming. He looked at Sean. "What was that?" he whispered. Sean's expression was calm. "They wanted confirmation. That's not what I meant." Sean's thumb brushed briefly against Dylan's cheek before lowering his hand. Dylan didn't know if he wanted to hit him or kiss him again. Instead, he turned to the reporters. "We're done here," Dylan said firmly. "Please respect the business." Sean's hand rested lightly at Dylan's lower back, protective, claiming, public, and Dylan didn't push it away. The cafe door closed. Silence. Staff staring. Dylan turned slowly. "You kissed me," he said. "Yes." "In front of cameras?" "Yes." Without asking? A pause. "Yes." Dylan ran a hand through his hair. "Was that strategy?" "No." That answer made his stomach flip. "Then what was it?" Sean stepped closer, lowered his voice. "I do not like being questioned about my loyalty. That doesn't require kissing me." It did. "You're unbelievable." Sean's gaze softened slightly. "You were shaking." Dylan froze. "I was not." "You were." The truth burned. "I do not enjoy watching you be cornered," Sean added quietly. The room felt smaller. "That doesn't explain the kiss," Dylan said. Sean held his gaze. "I wanted to." Silence crashed between them. Dylan's pulse pounded again. "You don't get to do things just because you want to," he whispered. "Then tell me not to." The challenge was soft, not aggressive. Dylan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because he didn't know the answer. He didn't know if he was angry, or excited, or terrified that the warmth of that kiss was still on his lips. "You confuse me," Dylan muttered. Sean's voice dropped. "Good." Dylan's eyes widened. "That wasn't part of the agreement." "No," Sean said calmly. "It wasn't." That night, Dylan couldn't sleep. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. His lips still felt warm. It was ridiculous. It had been hours. He turned to his side, closed his eyes, and there it was again. Sean's hand at his jaw, the way his thumb brushed his cheek, the way he leaned down slowly, like he wasn't unsure, like he had already decided. Dylan pressed his face into his pillow. "What is wrong with you?" he muttered to himself. He had been angry. He knew he had been, because it wasn't discussed, it wasn't planned, it wasn't strategic, it was impulsive, and that was dangerous. His fingers lifted unconsciously to his lips. The kiss hadn't been aggressive. It hadn't been for show. It hadn't been quick. It had been steady, intentional, and worst of all, he hadn't pulled away. Dylan squeezed his eyes shut. Why didn't I pull away? Because he hadn't wanted to. That truth sat heavy in his chest. He rolled onto his other side, stared at the door separating his room from the hallway. Sean was in the next room, probably calm, probably asleep, probably unaffected. Dylan felt restless, confused, and something else he didn't want to name. He sat up abruptly, ran a hand through his hair. "You're not dating," he whispered to himself. "You're married." The word hit differently now. Before, it had felt contractual. Now, it felt complicated. His heart thudded again as he remembered something else. When Sean pulled back, he hadn't looked at the cameras, he had looked at Dylan, not triumphant, not smug, just searching, as if waiting for rejection. Dylan exhaled slowly. That part unsettled him most, because it hadn't felt like performance, it had felt like a risk, and Sean did not take risks lightly. Dylan lay back down, staring at the ceiling again. He didn't know if he was angry, or excited, or terrified that he wanted it to happen again. Across the city, Alina Park stared at her phone screen. The headline glowed back at her. "Corporate power couple silences rumors with public kiss." The image underneath, Sean's hand on Dylan's face, Dylan's fingers gripping his coat. The angle made it look intimate, not staged, not forced, intimate. Alina's jaw tightened. Comments scrolled endlessly beneath the article. "He looks obsessed with his husband." That kiss did not look fake. She never had a chance. Power couple goals. Her nails dug into her palm. Impossible. She replayed the clip, again, again, again. There was no hesitation. No reluctance. Sean leaned in, like he meant it, like he wanted it. That part burned. She had seen Sean in negotiations, in boardrooms, at charity galas, controlled, measured, strategic. But that expression, it wasn't business. It was territorial. Her phone buzzed, a message from her father. "Explain this." Her stomach dropped. The Parks were not used to public embarrassment, especially not after a very visible rejection. She typed back carefully. "It's optics. He's protecting business stability." But even as she sent it, she didn't believe it, because she had been there. She had seen the way Sean looked at Dylan when she insulted him. That wasn't optics. That was personal. Her jaw clenched. She wasn't used to losing, especially not to someone she had dismissed as temporary. Her pride flared. Fine. If subtlety hadn't worked, escalation would. She opened her contacts and made a call. "If they want public," she said coolly when the line connected, "then let's give them something worth watching." Dylan arrived at the cafe early the next day. Too early. He hadn't slept properly. The staff were already whispering. One of them grinned. "Boss, you trended." Dylan froze. "I what?" His barista spun the tablet around. There it was. Clips of the kiss. Edits. Slow motion. Zoomed in. Comments dissecting the way Sean held him. Dylan's ears burned. "Turn that off," he muttered. But his eyes lingered a second too long, on the way Sean's thumb had brushed his cheek, on the way Dylan himself had leaned forward, just slightly. He hadn't noticed that, until now. Heat crept up his neck. He turned away quickly. At noon, Dylan was behind the counter when one of his staff gasped. "Boss, you need to see this." He stepped over. On the screen, Park Hospitality announces strategic partnership with Varelli Group. Dylan's stomach dropped. Park Hospitality Group, Varelli, Sean's most aggressive competitor in the last 2 quarters. The article continued. Sources suggest the partnership will significantly increase Park Hospitality's expansion power in urban development zones previously dominated by independent boutique investors. That was Sean's sector, and by extension, Dylan's cafe expansion plans. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't coincidence. It was retaliation. Dylan's chest tightened. The cafe door opened, as if summoned by timing alone. Sean walked in. He already knew. Of course he did. "You saw it," Dylan said quietly. "Yes. They're targeting your expansion zones." "Yes. And mine." A pause. Sean's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. She is escalating. Dylan looked at him. This is because of me. No, yes. Sean stepped closer. This is because she underestimated me. Sean left later on to his company, as he had just wanted to check up on Dylan. It was late afternoon when she walked in. No cameras, no reporters, no announcement, just heels against tile. The cafe went silent. Alina Park wore white, immaculate, controlled, untouchable. She approached the counter like she owned the floor beneath it. Dylan, she said pleasantly. He didn't smile. Alina, she glanced around. Charming place. It does well. I'm sure it does. The sweetness was thinner now, sharper. You moved quickly, Dylan said calmly. She tilted her head. You're referring to business? Of course. She smiled. Opportunities don't wait. Neither do grudges. Dylan folded his hands calmly on the counter. Partnering with Varelli is aggressive. So was kissing you in front of media. There it was. Direct. You came here to say that? I came here to observe. Observe what? She leaned in slightly. If you look nervous yet, Dylan held her gaze. I don't. A flicker of irritation passed through her eyes. You should, she said softly. The Varelli expansion includes 3 properties within 2 blocks of this cafe. The implication was clear. Competition, pressure, crowding. You're trying to scare me, Dylan said evenly. No, she replied. I'm trying to show you scale. She stepped back. You're emotional. He's powerful. That imbalance never lasts. Dylan's pulse pounded, but his face remained composed. You're confusing emotion with loyalty. Her eyes hardened. You think he chose you? The words hit harder than they should have. Dylan didn't answer. Alina studied him. He didn't kiss you for romance, she said coolly. He kissed you to protect an image. The doubt slid in like poison, because that was Dylan's fear. She smiled faintly. When the pressure mounts, we'll see how strong your position really is. The cafe door opened again. Sean stepped inside again. Dylan wondered how he's able to do office work and still come visit him 3 times in a day. The temperature shifted instantly. He didn't look surprised. He walked straight to Dylan's side. Not in front. Beside. Deliberate. Alina, he said calmly. Sean. She straightened slightly. I assume you've seen the news, she added smoothly. I have. And? You have chosen your alignment. And you'd have chosen yours, she replied, glancing at Dylan. Sean's voice cooled. My marriage is not a negotiation chip. I didn't say it was. You implied it. Silence crackled between them. Customers pretended not to listen. Everyone was listening. You're expanding into independent zones, Sean continued. Be certain you can sustain it. The warning was quiet. Real. Alina's smile returned, thinner now. I always sustain. Her eyes flicked to Dylan one last time. Good luck. Then she turned and left. The door closed. Silence lingered. Dylan exhaled slowly. She thinks you kissed me for strategy, he said quietly. Sean didn't look away from the door. She is wrong. Was she? That question hung heavier than either expected. Sean turned to him slowly. If it were strategy, he said evenly, I would have planned it. Dylan's heart skipped. I did not. The simplicity of that statement settled deep. You're starting a corporate war, Dylan murmured. No. Sean's eyes darkened slightly. She is. A beat. And she will lose, not arrogance. Certainty. Dylan swallowed, because the man standing beside him wasn't reacting emotionally. He was calculating, and when Sean calculated, the outcome was rarely balanced. It was decisive. The construction started 3 days later. Dylan noticed it when the drilling began at 7:12 a.m. Apron still tied around his waist. Across the street, black and gold signage was being mounted. Clean, flashy, aggressive. A temporary banner stretched across the building. Varelli Reserve, opening soon. Varelli Reserve. Dylan's stomach dropped. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Marble counters being installed. Professional crews moving with precision. This wasn't coincidence. This was placement. A luxury concept cafe directly across from his. Targeted. Calculated. Customers had already begun whispering. They're copying the artisan vibe, but making it high-end. Is this about that park partnership? Will this hurt you? Dylan kept his voice calm. We'll focus on our service, but inside, he understood scale. Varelli had money, brand recognition, corporate backing. He had heart, community, and limited capital. He walked back inside slowly. The espresso machine hissed. The familiar scent of roasted beans grounded him. This cafe wasn't just business, it was his. The door opened. Sean stepped inside. He had already seen it. Of course he had. "They're fast," Dylan said quietly. "Yes." "They're trying to overshadow us before launch." "Yes." Dylan crossed his arms. "They chose across the street on purpose." "Yes." The calm repetition irritated him. "Are you just going to keep saying yes?" Dylan snapped lightly. Sean's eyes settled on him. "No." Silence. "I am going to respond." It happened faster than Dylan expected. Within 48 hours, a press release dropped. Headline: Sean Han announces boutique investment initiative supporting independent culinary entrepreneurs. Han Capital. Dylan stared at the screen. Boutique investment initiative. The article continued. Han Capital confirms a significant financial backing of select independent establishments, beginning with a full-scale expansion and renovation of Dylan Cafe, including second-floor seating, in-house roasting, and regional distribution support. Dylan's breath caught. Full-scale expansion, regional distribution, second floor? He looked up slowly. Sean stood across the counter. "You did not consult me," Dylan said. "I am consulting you now. That's not how consultation works." "You wanted support without interference." Dylan hesitated. "Yes, this is support, not control, not takeover, support." "You're escalating publicly," Dylan said quietly. "Yes." "Because of me?" "Yes." The directness made his chest tighten. "You're making this bigger." "It already is." Sean stepped closer. "The Varelli model is luxury impersonation. Ours will be authenticity with capital. Ours." Dylan swallowed. "You're attaching your name to my cafe." "I am attaching my resources." "That's risky." "Yes. And if it fails?" "It will not." "That's certainty again." "Why?" Dylan asked softly. Sean's gaze didn't waver. "Because you built something worth defending." The words settled deep. "Not because you're my husband. Not because of optics. Not because of media. Because you built something." Dylan felt something warm rise in his chest. "You could have ignored it," he said. "I do not ignore attacks. You're treating this like war." "It is." Across the street, construction noise intensified. Metal against concrete, drills echoing. Dylan glanced toward the window. "They're opening in 3 weeks," he murmured. "We will announce renovation tomorrow," Sean replied. Dylan blinked. "Tomorrow?" "Yes." "You move fast. I do not allow opponents' momentum." The word opponents made it clear. This wasn't about jealousy anymore. It was corporate positioning. But underneath it, it was still personal. The lights were impossible to ignore. Across the street, gold spotlights washed over the sleek black exterior of Varelli Reserve. A velvet robe lined the entrance. Champagne trays, influencers posing, live violinists near the doorway. It looked expensive. It smelled expensive. It screamed expensive. Dylan stood at his cafe window and watched. Customers inside whispered nervously. "They're giving free tastings. They hired a celebrity food critic. Look at that interior." Marble counters gleamed under chandelier lighting. Staff in tailored uniforms moved like synchronized dancers. It was intimidating. Dylan felt it in his chest. Even with Sean's expansion announcements circulating, even with renovation plans beginning, this looked overwhelming. The Varelli doors opened. Music swelled. Cameras flashed. Then, the first problem. A delay at the register. A glitch in the POS system. Guests waiting. A minor hiccup. Manageable. Then the espresso bar backed up. Their high-end imported machine overheated under pressure. Steam sputtered violently. Customers shifted. Murmurs began. Then someone complained loudly. "This is lukewarm." Another voice. "I waited 20 minutes for this." The line stalled. Influencers stopped smiling. The violinist kept playing, but the tension was obvious. Inside Dylan's cafe, his regulars watched like it was live television. Sean stood beside him, arms relaxed, expression unreadable. "You knew?" Dylan asked quietly. "Yes." "You sabotaged them?" "No." A beat. They overextended. Varelli's model was spectacle, but spectacle without rhythm collapses fast. Their staff looked trained for presentation, not volume, and tonight, volume was relentless. Free drinks meant crowds. Crowds meant pressure. Pressure meant mistakes. A tray fell. Champagne glasses shattered. Someone slipped. The line thinned. Guests started leaving. Within an hour, the exclusive opening felt chaotic, not luxury, desperate. Dylan exhaled slowly. They spent millions on this. Yes, and it's unraveling. Yes. Sean didn't look pleased. He looked analytical. Will they recover? Dylan asked. Yes, but the first impression, Sean's gaze sharpened slightly, will linger. Across the street, Alina stood near the entrance, composed, but her jaw was tight. She was watching the same collapse, and then her eyes lifted, locked onto Sean, locked onto Dylan. She saw them standing side by side, calm, steady, unaffected. Later that night, Alina sat in the back office of Varelli Reserve, silence thick around her. The numbers were already disappointing. Her father had called, not angry, worse, disappointed. You miscalculated, he had said. She replayed the evening in her mind, the opening, the chaos, and then the memory of Sean's press release, publicly investing in Dylan, attaching capital to authenticity, doubling down. He hadn't hesitated. He hadn't distanced himself after the kiss. He had escalated. For Dylan, not for damage control. For him. Her stomach tightened. She remembered the look in Sean's eyes when she insulted Dylan. It had been personal, and tonight he hadn't even come to watch Varelli's opening up close. He had stood inside Dylan's cafe, where he belonged. That realization hit harder than the failed launch. She had misunderstood the axis of power. It wasn't Sean alone. It was them. And that partnership, whether emotional or not, was stable. Her fingers curled slightly. For the first time since this began, doubt crept in. Not about business. About judgment. She had thought Dylan was temporary. But Sean was not behaving like a man waiting for expiration. He was behaving like a man building permanence. Across the street, Dylan locked the cafe door for the night. He looked toward the dimming lights of Varelli Reserve. It failed, he said quietly. It stumbled, Sean corrected. Dylan glanced at him. You're not celebrating. No. Why? Because this is not over. A pause. Alina is intelligent. Dylan's chest tightened slightly. You still respect her? Yes. Honesty again. But she misjudged one thing. What? Sean turned toward him. You. The words settled deep. Dylan looked away quickly. You invested millions. Yes. Because of me. Yes. There it was again. No hesitation. No deflection. Just yes. Dylan swallowed. Why? Sean stepped closer, lowered his voice. Because when someone challenges what is mine, he stopped himself. Dylan's heart skipped. Not a confession, not yet, but close enough to make Dylan's pulse unsteady. Across the street, Varelli's lights dimmed completely. For the first time, the gold signage didn't look intimidating. It looked fragile, and Alina, sitting in that office alone, finally understood. This wasn't a rivalry she could split, because Sean had already chosen his side, and he wasn't standing alone. The next day, Alina did not arrive in white this time. No heels sharp enough to echo, no public sweetness. She came alone, in neutral colors, minimal makeup, controlled. Dylan was reviewing renovation plans when she walked in. No customers, mid-afternoon lull. Can we speak? She asked quietly, not sugary, not mocking. Dylan studied her for a moment, then nodded. They moved to a corner table. I miscalculated, she said calmly. That was unexpected. Dylan didn't react. You assumed you could intimidate me? He asked evenly. I assumed you were symbolic. The honesty didn't sting as much as before. And now I think you're stabilizing him. Dylan blinked. That's a strange way to put it. He's always been precise, she continued. Strategic, efficient. A pause. With you, he's impulsive. Dylan's pulse flickered. That's not a compliment. It isn't meant to be. Silence. I underestimated the emotional variable, she admitted. You mean you underestimated that he might care? Dylan asked softly. Alina's gaze sharpened slightly. I underestimated that he already does. That landed. Heavy. Dylan didn't speak. I won't withdraw from business, she said calmly, but I won't attack you directly again. Why? She stood. Because I don't fight battles I can't fracture. And for the first time, there was no venom in her tone, just calculation. She left without another word. Dylan sat there long after she was gone. Stabilizing him, impulsive, already cares. The words lingered. That night the apartment felt different. Not tense, not cold, heavy. Dylan found Sean in the living room reviewing documents. You knew she would adjust tactics, Dylan said. Yes. She won't attack me again. I am aware. Dylan hesitated. Did you know she realized? Realized what? That you're not neutral. Sean set the documents down slowly. The air shifted. You want to ask something, Sean said. Yes. Silence stretched. Dylan forced it out. The kiss. Sean didn't look away. What about it? What did it mean? Direct, no escape. Sean leaned back slightly. It meant I was unwilling to allow public doubt about my commitment. That's political, Dylan said quietly. Yes. And? A pause. And I wanted to. There was again. Not strategy, not optics. Desire. Dylan's pulse began to climb. Why? Sean studied him carefully. You were standing there, he said calmly. Surrounded, cornered. That doesn't answer me. Another pause. Longer this time. Because when I thought about someone else touching you. He stopped. Dylan's breath caught. Finish that. Sean's jaw tightened slightly. I did not like it. Jealousy. Personal. You're saying you were jealous? Dylan said quietly. Yes. The word landed like a spark in dry air. Dylan's chest tightened. You don't do things lightly. No. So that wasn't light. No. Silence wrapped around them. What are you saying? Dylan whispered. Sean leaned forward slightly. I am saying the kiss was not an accident. And not business. No. Dylan's heart pounded so loudly he could hear it. And if I hadn't responded? He asked softly. Sean's gaze dropped briefly to Dylan's lips. I would not do it again. Honesty. Vulnerable honesty. Dylan swallowed. And if I wanted you to? That question changed everything. Sean's eyes darkened slightly. The air grew thick, charged, unavoidable. By morning, headlines shifted again. Han Capital doubles down on cafe expansion after rival stumble. Han Capital commentary panels praised their alignment. Articles described them as strategically united, an emerging power couple. Power couple. Dylan read it 3 times. Investors began requesting meetings specifically referencing the strength of your visible partnership. Sean entered the cafe mid-morning. You've seen it, he said calmly. Yes. Dylan looked at him carefully. They think we're unstoppable. We are aligned. That word again. Aligned. Not pretending, not faking. Aligned. Dylan stepped closer, lowered his voice. You're not correcting them. No. Why? Sean's expression shifted slightly. Because they are not wrong. Dylan's pulse quickened again. You're dangerous, he muttered. Sean's gaze softened slightly. Only when necessary. Dylan's chest felt tight. He couldn't stop replaying the kiss, the one in front of cameras, the warmth, the possessiveness, the certainty. Sean, Dylan murmured softly, finally letting the words out. Sean looked up, one brow raised. What is it? Dylan swallowed hard, gripping the counter. The kiss. Sean's lips twitched in a near smile. You're thinking about it? He asked slowly, stepping closer. Yes. Dylan's voice was barely above a whisper. And, I don't know if I'm angry, or... He broke off, too flustered to finish. Sean closed the distance between them. Or what? He prompted. Tone low, smooth, impossible to resist. Dylan's hands shook. He finally let them drop. Or excited. Sean's lips curved into a satisfied smirk. I see. The air felt charged, like the entire cafe could disappear and they'd still be in the middle of a storm. Sean leaned down, almost casual. Do you want to feel it again? Dylan's brain screamed, yes, but his voice barely worked. Maybe. Before he could even think of a proper sentence, Sean's lips were on his again, soft, deliberate, claiming. This time, Dylan didn't hesitate. He pressed closer instinctively, as if magnetized. His fingers instinctively curled into Sean's jacket. And then, the cafe door opened. A customer cleared their throat loudly. Sean pulled back slightly, smirk still teasing. Public or private, I'm willing to test boundaries. Dylan's face flamed. We people. Sean's eyes softened. Let them see. I don't care. Dylan's pulse raced, heart hammering in ways he didn't understand. Excitement, fear, something dangerously intoxicating. It was the weekend at home. The apartment was quiet, save for the soft hum of the air conditioner and the distant city noise. Dylan had hoped for a normal Saturday. Just him. Just a little peace after a week of Varelli drama and media attention. He hadn't counted on Sean. Sean appeared in the living room in a simple white t-shirt and sweatpants, holding a file of renovation plans. His hair was slightly mussed from sleep, eyes dark and unreadable as he glanced at Dylan. "Plans for the second floor," Sean said, voice casual, but the tone had an edge Dylan couldn't ignore. "I'm off today," Dylan replied, trying to maintain his own calm. "Can we take a break?" Sean's eyes flicked up, and Dylan froze. That look, half amusement, half predatory, made his pulse spike. "You're not taking a break," Sean murmured, stepping closer. "Not while I'm home." Dylan swallowed hard. I mean from work." Sean smirked. "And I mean from resisting me." Heat rose to Dylan's cheeks. He wanted to be angry, wanted to scold, wanted to keep some control. Instead, he swallowed nervously. "Sean." Sean moved even closer. Dylan could feel his warmth now, the faint scent of his cologne, the strength of him contained only by a cotton t-shirt. Dylan's hands itched to touch, but he froze as Sean reached out. A single finger brushed Dylan's jaw. "Do you know what you do to me?" Sean whispered. Dylan's knees nearly buckled. I don't." Sean's hand slid behind his neck, tilting Dylan's face up. Their lips were inches apart. Dylan could feel every beat of his heart echo in his chest. "You're irresistible," Sean said softly, "and you keep pretending you aren't aware of it." Dylan's breath hitched. I can't." Sean leaned in slowly, brushing their lips together in a ghost of a kiss. A teasing, slow press that left Dylan burning but wanting more. "Stop teasing," Dylan muttered, voice trembling. Sean smirked, fingers tightening slightly on Dylan's neck. "I'm not teasing." Dylan opened his mouth to argue, but Sean silenced him with another slow, deliberate kiss. This one lasted longer, deeper, testing boundaries. Dylan's hands instinctively went to Sean's chest, gripping the cotton of his t-shirt as desire surged. Sean pulled back slightly, eyes smoldering. "You like that?" he said softly, watching Dylan's reaction. Dylan's cheeks burned crimson. I don't know." Sean smiled faintly, brushing his thumb across Dylan's cheek. "Yes, you do." Dylan tried to focus on coffee cups, counters, and menus, but Sean wouldn't let him. He appeared behind Dylan in the kitchen, hands brushing Dylan's shoulders as if to steady him, but every touch sent shivers down his spine. "Hands off the espresso machine," Dylan snapped lightly, but his voice faltered as Sean's chest pressed just slightly against his back. Sean chuckled lowly. "Or what?" Dylan flinched, but not away. "Or I'll stop you," Dylan blurted, voice cracking slightly. Sean laughed softly and leaned down, lips brushing Dylan's ear. "You won't." Heat surged through Dylan like wildfire. He spun around instinctively, and Sean caught him, arms encircling his waist. The next kiss wasn't gentle. It was sharp, claiming, possessive. Dylan gasped as he tried to pull back, but Sean wouldn't let go. "Sean!" Dylan's voice trembled, half plea, half surrender. Dylan groaned, leaning into him despite his protests. Sean's hands roamed possessively, brushing over hips, shoulders, back, claiming. Dylan's mind was a mess of heat and disbelief. The next kiss wasn't gentle. It was sharp, claiming, possessive. Dylan gasped as he tried to pull back, but Sean wouldn't let go. "Sean!" Dylan's voice trembled, half plea, half surrender. Sean's hands roamed over Dylan's shoulders, down his back, tilting him against the counter. Dylan moaned softly, a shiver traveling down his spine, as Sean's hands slid lower, pulling him flush against his body. Heat pooled everywhere, mind going hazy with desire and longing. "You're mine tonight," Sean whispered, lips brushing Dylan's ear. "And you like it." Dylan's heart raced, knees weak, every instinct betraying his protests. I do," he admitted, voice trembling, betraying how much he wanted it. Sean's smirk was all satisfaction. "Good," he said, pressing him closer, hands roaming possessively. The night blurred into touches, whispers, and stolen, breathless kisses. Dylan surrendered fully, riding the sharp, possessive rhythm Sean set. Hours passed. Time didn't exist. Only the heat, the claim, the overwhelming pull of Sean against him. And when they finally collapsed together on the bed, Dylan's chest heaving, body slick with sweat, he couldn't deny it. He was addicted. Completely. Morning after sunlight streamed through the blinds. Dylan stirred, stretched, and reached to sit up, only to freeze. His shirt tugged slightly, and that's when he saw them. Dark, angry purple hickeys sprawling across his neck, shoulders, and even collarbone. He yelped. "What the?" Dylan bolted upright, pulling the mirror from the dresser. Every mark glared back at him like a warning sign. He groaned, face flushed, part embarrassment, part fury. Sean. Sean's voice came lazily from behind him. Dylan spun around. What the hell? He jabbed a finger at his own reflection. These, on my neck, my shoulders, people are going to see. Sean leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, smirk teasing. Good, they'll know whose you are. Dylan's jaw dropped. I'm not, people will think. Think what? Sean asked smoothly, walking closer, eyes dark and teasing. That you belong to me? That's exactly right. Dylan threw his pillow at him. These are huge. You can't just, I can't go into the cafe like this. Sean laughed softly, amused by Dylan's flustered panic. Then wear a scarf or a high-collared shirt, but the marks, they're permanent enough to remind you. Dylan groaned, burying his face in his hands. I can't believe you. Sean leaned down, brushing a thumb over the side of Dylan's jaw. Oh, you love it. Don't pretend otherwise. Dylan peeked up through his fingers. His cheeks burned scarlet. Maybe I do. Sean's grin widened. Good, because I'm not done. Dylan's stomach flipped violently, heart hammering. Angry? Yes. Embarrassed? Absolutely. Into it? Completely. Sean chuckled, catching Dylan's flustered gaze. Weekend isn't over, little spoon, not by a long shot. Dylan groaned again, partly in frustration, partly in desire. This was so not fair. But he couldn't stop thinking about how warm, strong, and possessive Sean had been all night. Dylan buried his face in the pillow, groaning again, but his body betrayed him, tingling with warmth, desire, and satisfaction. For the first time, a month later, with the cafe thriving, the rival failing, and the media obsessed, Dylan realized something simple yet intoxicating. He was completely, utterly, and deliciously owned by Sean, and he wouldn't have it any other way.